There's a lot of talk about eliminating pain and suffering. Well, a lot of the pain and suffering comes from the construct of society. The construct of society was a man-made construct. Why don't they reconstruct society in a particular way which causes less suffering? Instead of developing technology which allows a bad society to continue living.
And to be clear, we actually do insert, I guess, about 3 or 4 millimeters into the cortex. So these electrodes are sensing from multiple layers within the cortex. There are deeper brain systems that are underneath your cortex, like the hypothalamus, and I think that is something we'd want to interface with for sure, because that's going to be important for curing things like depression, addiction, that kind of thing, anxiety.
Solving things related to anxiety or depression, or even like removing fear. Like I'm an athlete, and to like rock climb without fear would be pretty.
Maybe need a little bit of fear.
Yeah, just a little. And also, it'd be great if we could make the pigs fly. But
all you're doing is creating more disease and more illness within the society. They're selling technology as the answer, but technology isn't the answer. The answer is actually changing the behavior of humans. If the human doesn't want to change and wants to carry on with its behavior, which is going in a bad direction, the technology will allow that to happen. And that direction is not a direction which I particularly think we should go. That doesn't mean that technology is bad and that technology can't help us to go in another direction. But I think the deontological instead of the teleological goal of the direction should be looked at more carefully. The initial point, the inertia, the deontological, the basis, the idea needs to be good, not the goal. And technology hasn't even told you where the goal is or where it wants you to go. It's just telling you it's going to be better, it's going to be more fun. Suffering seems to be part of the human conditioning anyway. And suffering seems to lead to transformation. Transformation is something that's very important for humans in consciousness and spirituality, because the suffering helps you develop. It's a very unpleasant way of doing something. You can get transformation through joy, and you can get it through suffering. Taking away suffering is taking away part of the human condition. If you take away suffering, we're no longer going to be humans anymore. And no real evaluation or study has gone into the importance of suffering for humanity. We don't like it, therefore we shouldn't do it. It's like going to school. We don't like going to school. A child doesn't like going to school, so you say, okay, you don't have to go to school. And just download all the information into the head. We don't know if just giving people things for free without them having to work, what type of human we're going to develop. In effect, suffering sometimes seems to be a teacher. It modifies our behavior, modifies our thoughts. Those are all transformations. What the technology is saying is we'll transform you, but the suffering is also transforming you. But the technology isn't going to be able to transform you to where the suffering transformed you. So you're going to have a completely different path through this lack of suffering. What you're basically doing is taking away a part of humanity that's been with us for 200,000 years. You're in effect creating a new human, the transhuman. You're creating the post-human. And they're not telling people what they're doing. They're just saying, you've got a lot of suffering, we'll take it away. But they're not telling you where you're going or where this type of behavior leads to. And that's the behavior, that's the goal that we need to find out as humans. What is their attention? What is their goal? What is it that they're not telling us about? They create a society which is ill, which is full of suffering. They say they can take the suffering away, but they're not telling us what the lack of suffering or the incapacity to be able to suffer is going to go for humans. Society doesn't need to suffer as much, but I think that part of the human condition does involve some suffering to some degree. In fact, some of the greatest people in the world have suffered incalculably. They've gone through terrible processes. They've had to live through terrible experiences. And that's what's made them who they are. If suffering leads to consciousness, where does non-suffering lead us? Well, it leads us to other planets and it leads us to Mars. But you know, if the point of life is to increase your consciousness, does it matter if you do it on Earth or does it matter if you do it on Mars? This idea that everything's going to be better on Mars, it's going to, Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, and they're going to, what they'll do on Mars is they'll take all the best brains and all the best scientists and they'll put them over there. They'll modify the bodies, they'll modify the intelligence. Because on Earth, the people might not want to change. They might be scared, they might be full of fear. But on Mars, you might have to change in order to acclimatize to the climate, in order to survive there. And after generations there and people being brought up there, children, they'll start to modernize that. And then you're going to have two different races of humans. And that's going to be another problem because it'll be another threat. Because if you have a race of humans on another planet, which is far more advanced, does that mean that they're going to attack Earth? And there you're going to have another problem and you might have a war or whatever comes with that. So we have to, I think that if you want to go and change, you want to go and transform, the transformation has to come from a spiritual and a philosophical point of view, not just a hedonistic point of view where we don't want to suffer anymore.